Thank you for joining me today as I talk through 12 knit patterns to get a granola girl aesthetic look. All right, thank you so much for joining me today. As I said in my little intro, we will be covering the granola girl aesthetic today. So I have 12 patterns in 3 different categories to go through. So let's just get into it. So granola girl, if you're not familiar, is a style that is kind of focused on backpacking and camping and van life. So there's a lot of large practical pieces. The most iconic footwear of the granola girl style is a blundstone boot. A lot more focused on practicality of being outdoors and keeping warm and keeping comfortable. There's also a lot of oversized pieces. So things are typically quite large, and there's a lot of thrifted stuff or just funkier stuff as well. So a lot of it you see is a little bit older, a little bit more distressed, fairly oversized, and then a lot of just funky pieces. There's also a lot of similar colors to cottagecore, very pretty muted colors, lots of greens, lots of browns, but there's more pops of colors. You'll see a bright red hat, or one of my inspiration pictures is this pretty bright orange pair of pants with a pretty bright orange and mustard yellow and white sweater. So some more color here. It's almost kind of like a 70s color palette mixed with a very earthy color palette, I guess, maybe. I don't know. I guess 70s is kind of earthy already. So maybe it's like a muted 70s palette, if that makes sense. Anyways, the first thing that you see a lot in granola girl style is an oversized colorwork sweater. The colorwork can be multiple things. It can be stripes, it can be fades, it can be a full Fair Isle stranded colorwork sweater. So I've chosen a few to highlight. So let's just get into it. The first one is the Little Crystals by Celine Phaeton. This is a really wonderful sweater. It reminds me a lot of kind of those ski sweaters you see, and I just can imagine thrifting this and finding like a very well-loved version of this already in the thrift store. It's all over Colorwork. It's got the kind of snow details that you see often, some diamond details. You can see it, it's on the screen. A lot of different details of colorwork, and it's really cool. This is in a worsted weight yarn, and it's really well oversized. It's graded up to a 66-inch bust, and then it's meant to have I don't see it, 19 centimeters of positive ease. So it's a very oversized sweater. It's a wonderful piece. It just looks robust and like it'll keep you warm, which is what you want if you are being a practical granola girl, not just wearing that out. But if you are camping or backpacking, you probably wouldn't want to bring this backpacking. But if you're car camping or doing something where you just need to stay warm, this would be a wonderful piece for that. So highly recommend that. It's also a beautiful design, and it was just released. It was released in January, so it's a newer design as well. Okay, the next one I'll recommend is the Shen. This is by Kate Davies Designs. This is a Fair Isle all over colorwork piece. So it's a lot of different colors. I think that there's about, I can't count with just looking at it, but I'd say over 6 colors, and it would be an undertaking. It's also in fingering weight, so it would be quite the undertaking to knit this one. But it's really beautiful. It's got similar motifs actually to the last one, with the kind of snow shapes, a lot of cross shapes on this one. And I'd maybe size up in this one to get more of the oversized look that a lot of the granola girl sweaters have, but it's really wonderful. And then maybe I'd also stick to a kind of earth tones palette with maybe one pop of color. It's wonderful. and a really sweet, more traditional Fair Isle sweater. The next thing that I'll recommend is the Pelican. This is the Pelican sweater. This is an Isager design, so it was designed by Marianne Isager, or is it Isager? Let me know. And it's another all over color work, another all over stranded color work. It's really cool. It's got a lot of very geometric designs. There's these diagonal stripes and then these kind of bird shaped, it's supposed to be a pelican. They're more abstract designs. And yeah, I really like, it's meant to be quite oversized. So I really like that. And it looks wonderful and warm and very, very fun. And I think that I could see someone wearing this in a Sprinter van. So that's the look we're going for. All right, and then the final one I'll recommend is the Roxana sweater. This is a knitting pattern by Hip Knit Shop. If you've never heard of them before, I highly recommend checking them out. They don't have patterns on Ravelry. They're all through their website because they are also a yarn seller. But yeah, this pattern, it's interesting because it has 3 different necklines. I don't know if you'd call them necklines. I think so. So there's one with a balaclava attached to it. So it's a pretty tight fitting balaclava on the sweater. There's one with a hood. So it's a little bit more oversized and it can like a more traditional hood. And then one with just a crew neck folded over neckband. So it's a really interesting pattern, and it is knitted with 1 strand of their hip wool, which I believe, let me check, maybe a bulky weight. So this one would be the quickest to knit most likely if it is actually in a bulky weight. And it's got some larger, more geometric designs, and it's only got color work at the top and at the bottom. So there's a lot of just stockinette within the sweater. So this one would be a little bit easier to knit, which is nice. So, okay. That is the first set of recommendations. The next thing that I see a lot with granola girl outfits is some squishy textured socks. Specifically, I saw a lot of hand knit socks in kind of granola girl outfits or roundups of styling. So some of them are really cabled, some just have an interesting knit pearl texture, some are just plain socks in a fun self-striping yarn. So lots of different options here for what you want your texture and squishiness to be in the socks. But I've collected 4 sock pattern recommendations. So let's get into it. The first one is the Woodland Winter Sock Collection. This is by Carly Perrins, and I'm specifically recommending the cuff down one. She has the same 4 socks written for toe up if you prefer a toe up sock. But it's 4 very cabled socks. I think that the Woodland Winter name says it all as far as the granola girl look. And I specifically really think the middle one, that in this first picture that will be up, the middle one, which is in a white and a kind of turmeric color, would really serve this. It's just got bigger, more braided cables, whereas some of the others are, one's lace and then the other has more smaller cables. So I think that the bigger, the chunkier the cable, the better here. But they are all beautiful, so whichever really strikes your fancy the most. And yeah, just a set of, I think, three socks is a good deal. And then this is a fingering weight pattern, as the majority of the socks will be, although I think I have 1 DK on here. Okay, the next sock that I'm going to recommend is the Hygge Season sock by Nordland. So this is a DK weight sock. So if you're looking for a really squishy sock, this is the way to go. It's got these really big cables right down the front, and then the rest is kind of a wide rip. These would be very comfy for sitting around a campfire or, just sleeping in a tent overnight. These, one of my close friends backpacks a lot, and she has kind of her, like her camp shoes and then, her backpacking stuff. So I think these would be your camp socks. And yeah, they'd keep you nice and warm and just be nice and squishy. And they would look really cute poking out a pair of Blundstones or in a pair of Birkenstocks as well. So very, very cute pattern set there. And then the next one that I will recommend is the pumpkin spice socks by This Handmade Life. This is another nicely cabled sock. This one also has a traditional heel flap and gusset, which I think actually fits really well into the granola girl aesthetic. I don't know why, but it just looks looks granola girl. I think the majority of the socks I saw recommended for the granola girl style did have the heel flap and gusset. And yeah, some really nice cables, and then there's still texture on the back, even though it's not cabled. There's a nice knit pearl texture. And that is a fingering weight sock. And then my final recommendation for this is the Kelpie socks. This is another This Handmade Life pattern. These are another nice cable. It's kind of a thinner cable than the others I've recommended, but there is also an all over texture pattern. So not only do you get that nice cable down the side, but there's also a cool knit pearl texture throughout. And that's another fingering weight pattern. So those are the recommendations for socks to achieve the granola girl look, and let's move on. So the next granola girl set of patterns is the simple hat with a point. So I think that it's pretty self-explanatory that if you are camping or outdoors a lot, you are going to need a nice hat to keep you warm. And so it makes sense that you see a lot of these simple hats in the granola girl aesthetic. A lot of them are just a simple 2x2 rib or all plain stockinette hat, but they all have just a little bit of a point at the top. There's no like super well-fitting no point hat, and there's also not a ton of the kind of like flop hats where you see sometimes you'll see hats where they are kind of shaped so that there's ends up being like two panels shaped together at the top. These are more pointy, if that makes sense. That's not always the case, but most of the time you see more of like a little point than like a little just extra bit of fabric. So yeah, that makes sense. So I found 4 patterns here that I think really fit that. The first is another Suzanne Mueller or Paula Strick pattern. This is the Kara Mutze. I don't know, it's a German word. But it's an all over stockinette hat, and it just has a really nice bit of extra fabric at the top, and is a really simple hat. It's got some really nice shaping where everything goes into these lines. And the lines are actually really interestingly kind of makes this almost leaf pattern at the shaping lines. So it's a really interesting hat, but it's also quite simple in the fact that it's just all over stockinette. And it's got a single folded brim, which is nice. This is a DK weight hat, so it would knit up pretty quickly, and yeah, it's nice. Oh, it's also top down. So it's actually increases that make that shaping. So that would be an interesting one to knit. The next one is the Olay hat, also by Paula Strick or Suzanne Mueller. She has good hats that fit this well. I think brioche tuck is the stitch. So all over brioche hat. This one's knit from bottom up, and it's in a DK weight, and it just has that little bit of extra point right at the top because there's, I think, only 4 lines of shaping, which kind of gives you that little bit of a point. And yeah, it's a really nice hat. There's also a matching mitten pattern if you were interested in that. And yeah, simple but classic, which is nice. The next pattern is the Basic Beanie by Tin Can Knits. This is a little bit more shaped than the other ones, but you could have the little point at the top. It also has 4 pieces of shaping to get you to kind of have a little bit more of a point. And this one's nice because it's written to have instructions for multiple different fabric characteristics. So you could do a 2x2 rib or a 1x1 rib, and I think that you could also maybe do a stockinette in this. And it's a really simple hat with just the 4 points of shaping. So that would be a good one to do if you are just looking for something simple. That will also be, you could do it in the 2x2 rib, which I think would get you closer to the granola girl look, or in the future if you wanted to do a 1x1 rib hat as well, you do have that option. And then the final pattern in this roundup of hat patterns for Granola Girl is the Robin Beanie. This is a hat by Sari Nordlund, and it's got a point. It's like very pointy the way she has it. You could definitely knit the hat not as long to have less of a point, but it's a 2x2 ribbed hat with another 4 points of decreases to get that shape. This one actually might be top down. Yeah, this is a top down, so it's again 4 points of increases to get that shape, and then it's got a double folded thick band. So you could easily do just a single folded if you wanted, but this would keep you warm. And it's definitely like a substantial hat. I also really love the pop of color that Sari Nordlund knit this in. So she has 2 samples, one in a brown and then one in a super neon pink. And that could be really fun as well for the Granola Girl. Although maybe I'd do like a neon orange. I don't know how much neon pink you really see. But you can also do whatever you want and call it whatever aesthetic you wanted. You know, if you pull in other elements of the Granola Girl, you don't necessarily have to have the perfect colors. If you have the other elements there, you can kind of play with that and make the bright pink hat fit the Granola Girl aesthetic if you are interested in having a bright pink hat but still having kind of blundstones or oversized. Like you can make it work. All right, that's all the patterns I have today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this and got some inspiration from it. Please tell me down below what your favorite pattern was and if you have a favorite aesthetic that you would like me to cover in the future. All right, have a good one. Bye.